Welcome back to Africa This Week with me, Ayo Johnson. President Obama's visit to Kenya is to strengthen US security and economic ties. But Kenyans view him as a native son returning to his home country of his father's birth. We'll look at the issues concerning US and Africa relations. Adam Amunu has more.
As the son of a Kenyan man, Barack Obama's trip to Nairobi in Kenya this weekend has been so significant that preparations for Obama's arrival has occupied the East African country in what can only be described as Obama mania.
The mere fact that the father was actually a Kenyan, and not only a Kenyan, was actually a Luo by tribe, if you were to now look at Obama as an individual. So we are quite proud of him, and as a Luo community, we are quite happy that the first sitting president to have ever visited Kenya will be a Kenyan, will be a Luo, and will be one of us.
Posters showcasing Obama and the First Lady as a royal couple indicate how important the visit is for Kenyan citizens. Preparations for his arrival have been building up for weeks in all aspects of society, including the arts and entertainment sector. Kenya's Tone Theatre production company, Theatre, put on an Obama-themed musical to welcome the US president. But the lead-up to the visit has had its fair share of controversy. This includes protests against Obama highlighting and addressing legislation on homosexuality on his trip. And more recently, CNN's depiction of Obama flying into a country described as a hotbed of terror has offended many Kenyans. Kenyan President Kenyatta demanded an apology on Thursday. However, the main focus of the visit is security in light of the United States anti-terror strategy. With Kenya having been attacked by al-Shabaab forces in recent years, it is considered a central partner to combating terrorism in Africa for US policymakers. Obama's previous trips to Africa included meeting with the late Ghanaian President John Atta Mills, Tanzania, and a visit to an old slave fortress in Senegal to acknowledge the importance of Africa. Such trips and liaisons has given the impression Africa is central to US international policy. There are those, however, who believe that such trips are merely a PR stunt and falls on the verge of being merely symbolic, and that his relationship with Africa has lacked effectiveness. According to figures from Brookings Institute, US trade has declined under Africa in comparison with China and the European Union since 2009. US trade profits with Africa fell to $60 billion in comparison to China, which stood at $170 billion. Some believe Obama's take on the war on terror has helped destabilize Africa. According to American academic William Gumede, many African despots have used the pretext of the war on terror to crush opposition groups, giving African extremist groups a cause to fight for. For example, the US-led war in Libya brought more weapons to such groups in surrounding countries such as Mali. Others believe Obama's administration and his visit this weekend represents a new watershed moment, not only for Kenya but the whole of Africa, where Africa is seen as an equal partner on the global stage.
He actually gave Africans the responsibility to take charge of their destiny. When he was talking about, we need a new breed of leadership, a new focus, instead of always complaining that other people are messing Africa and therefore we should always be crying. So if we compare with maybe the previous American presidents, I think his style is that of pointing you to something but letting you go for it.
He also believes that Obama's take towards Africa is not about, as he calls it, babysitting the continent.
We don't want Obama to come to babysit Africans, And for me, the best president would be that type of president who knows that what holds back Africa is not that they lack skills or capability. What holds back Africa is first, of course, we have what we'll call the global systems. And then, of course, internally, we have our own political, what I would call political myopia, where we focus on short-term goals instead of looking at the bigger picture. Because even if we took the example of Obama visiting Kenya, for example, for me I would take it as a visit that is about Africa more than it is about Kenya.
Obama has been dubbed the son of Africa, but there is a split opinion on whether his presidency has changed US-Africa relations. With 2 years to go until he leaves the White House, the answer to this question is one still in the making. Adam Amunu, Africa This Week.
To discuss this, we have Associate Professor Thomas Kwesi Teku from Cornell University in the United States. He's also the author of the book, US-Africa, The Relations of the Age of Obama. Welcome to the show. Professor Teku, if you could sort of tell me, put into context for us this particular visit to Kenya by President Obama.
Let me first say that I have since moved to King's University College in Ontario. On your question, the Obama's visit is significant in two ways. One is obviously the symbolic nature of the visit. The son of Africa, someone who is felt by Kenyans to have been snubbed on his first visit. So visiting for the second time is seen at a personal level by most Kenyans as a victory for them. But on the substantive level, it is also important to reassert U.S.-Kenya and U.S.-Africa relationship and put it on a different kind of a pedestal.
But hang on a second, Doctor, Professor, on the issue of his trip there, I mean, put it into context for us in terms of security.
I think, it's very, very important for the Obama to visit, in part because the Somali coast is very, very important for trade between the U.S. and Africa and between the U.S. and Asia. And Al-Shabaab, as well as various terrorist groups, are destabilizing. So Obama sees Kenya and Ethiopia as key to undermining the presence of Al-Shabaab along the East African coast. And remember that Kenyans have not been as effective compared to the way the Ethiopians have been effective in terms of dealing with terrorism. And Obama wanted to go and have a conversation in a way that would help the Kenyans put the necessary security apparatus in place to be able to deal with Al-Shabaab.
So how do you describe right now the Kenyan terrorist strategy, and how does that fit with Obama's own strategy, and how's that going to marry up?
To some extent, the Kenyan strategy is very aligned or close to that of the Obama strategy, which is based on a strong, hard-hitting security presence along the coast. Compare that one to that of Ethiopia, which is hard-hitting, but they are also dealing at a broader ideological level of ensuring that the Somali people or the people in Somalia are brought into the mainstream of society and ensuring that they are part and parcel of the society. Whereas in the Kenyan case, the Somali people still feel that they are outside of the mainstream of the Somali society. And that makes it very, very easy for them to be converted into an Islamic group. And I think that is a conversation that Obama may be getting when he gets to Ethiopia, for example. And I think it's a message that he will send to the Kenyans.
But a trip, nonetheless, he hasn't made to Somalia, next door. How do you feel that the rest of Africa would perceive Obama's visit right now, and how is he being received?
I think broadly, he's never going to reinvent the kind of messianic reception that he received on his first visit. It is still significant for a number of Africans, and for Africans, particularly keen observers of African politics, who have always wanted or thought that an African-American president would change U.S.-Africa relationship from this traditional state focus that has not really worked for the African continent to a kind of a pan-African-oriented approach to U.S.-African relationship. And I think he's beginning, and although some would say that it's a kind of an afterthought, he's beginning to appreciate the fact that perhaps working through the Pan-African institutions may be a more effective way of dealing with Africa than dealing with Africans on a state-by-state basis, which is easy for a number of African countries, and particularly, dictators, to play the cat and mouse game with the US. So I think the visit, more or less, is an important part of the broader approach, I think, of our Obama administration to change the dialogue and the narrative between Africa and that of the US. And that's why I think this one is more significant than a Ghanaian trip.
And he's previously visited Ghana, Senegal, Tanzania, and of course now Kenya. In terms of its symbolic achievements, how are the rest of Africans going to appreciate, hold on, an exchange with Obama himself?
I think it's symbolically important because for a long time, Africans have thought that US-Africa relationship is just only an afterthought. And you know very well that the Africa Department is the weakest link within the US government establishment. And Obama didn't make any effort on the fundamental changes to that, right? So a number of Africans still feel that, Africa is not important. Him visiting at the moment, not during his last days, remember that he released his Africa policy almost on the last year of his first term, which many thought was showed that Africa to him is just only a small part of his thinking. But now he's going in the middle of his second term, and that is an indication that to some extent he would be able, or he wants to do something different. So symbolically, it is very important. It is also very important for him to show his connection to the continent of Africa and to cement his legacy as an African American. And it's also a message to the African American community. Remember the dialogue that is going on in the US about race relationship. And to some extent, Obama is now connecting more with the African American community. And as part of this connection, going to Africa and sending the message that I get you people is very, very important.
But on that issue of connection, he's clearly achieved that in the US, as you're saying. But I question, has he achieved that on the African continent? Because many would say he's been slightly disappointing in terms of his relationship with Africa, especially on geography, culture, and economics. How do you place him?
I think in terms of the broader context of US policy, he's been decisively disappointing, to be honest. If you look at it, a number of things that he needed to do did not actually involve money. And a number of them just involved just small little changes to US policy that would have changed things in a dramatic way. I'll give you one classic example. US has been promoting democracy, spending billions of money promoting democracy on the African continent. Yet, the African Union has come out with, by all estimation, some of the best normative rules around governance, and they don't have anyone to promote it. And US has a diplomatic presence in Addis Ababa, and there's no one. It was the Germans who have, through GIS, have actually seconded someone to go to the African Union to promote it. And these are some of the little things that he could have done for the continent. So it's been very, very disappointing for a number of Africans. And the other thing, too, that I can also point out is that for an African-American president to sit and to see China building an African Union or building and donating a building to the African Union must be very disheartening indeed. And then the last point about it is that for an African-American president to see China getting more contract, and part of the trips are actually the fact that there's a general recognition that US businesses are losing to the Chinese contractors. And what he wants to do is to reassert and get some contracts for US businesses.
Well, let's put this into context. We normally see great leaders like Mandela. We talk about legacies. Is it fair, or are we okay to say what is Obama's legacy on the African continent, especially in relation to some of the issues that you've just mentioned?
I think his legacy is going to be that maybe he changed the tone of US-African relationship from, frankly speaking, a tradition of paternalism to a kind of a new tone where he's asking Africans to take responsibilities for their own affairs. And then he's also changed the tone in the sense that he's given up on the old Africans, right, the old leaders, and thinking about building a new generation of African leaders. And I think that's going to be his legacy. His legacy will be the fact that he gave the African youth the opportunity and the chance to express themselves. And I think the Yali project, for example, may be his significant achievement and his legacy. But my sense is that he's still got 2 years and he can change the dialogue. And the things that he needs to do to change the dialogue is not a lot. It will not involve money or will not involve congressional approval.
So his legacy is yet to be written, or it's been written and is yet to achieve all that he's meant to do. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for in this episode. I want to thank all my guests for joining us and to you at home for watching. Yesterday marked 1 year that Nigeria did not receive a single polio result. It has taken it off the list of countries where the disease is endemic. We'll leave you with scenes from the polio survivors in Nigeria learning carpentry and metalwork, skills to help build wheelchairs with helping disabled people. We'll be back next week at the same time. Until then, have a good evening.